After this week, it might be safe to say that the OKC Thunder are the best team in the Western Conference, and we will discuss that and more in this week's weekly recap. The Pistons were so close to winning on Tuesday. Cade had 41 points, but it wasn't enough as they lost a heartbreaker against the Nets to set the record for the longest losing streak in NBA history. They then lost another heartbreaker to the Celtics in overtime, but I will say Jaden Ivey impressed me a lot with his abilities to make clutch shots and to show up in the big moments. However, he committed one dumb foul, which inevitably led to him fouling out in overtime. So he couldn't keep his special night going, but they finally won. And they did it against the Raptors, behind 30 and 12 from Cade, and 6 players were in double figures. Good job, Pistons. The Spurs opened their week against the Jazz, and they could not come away with a win despite a very complete offensive performance from almost everyone on the team. Before the Spurs matched up against the Blazers, Scoot Henderson made some comments saying there's no front runner for Rookie of the Year. Wemby took it personally as he had 30 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 7 blocks in a 13-point win against Portland. Wemby would miss the second game of the back-to-back as they lost by 6 to Portland, but Devin Vassell had 22 and Keldon Johnson had 29, 7, and 7 off the bench. The Spurs would get Wemby back at home to end their week, but they played the Celtics, and the rest was history. The Wizards almost pulled off a comeback win to upset the Magic to start their week, but it was a little too late, even though Jordan Poole was cooking in the fourth and finished with 30. They did not build off any of the momentum, however, as they got slapped by the Raptors 132 to 102. But the Wizards were able to shock the Nets on Friday as Kuzma and Denny Avdija both were cooking in the big 6-point win. Kuzma would then go off for 38 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists on Sunday, but it wasn't enough as they lost their third game of the week to the Hawks to conclude their week 1 and 3. The Charlotte Hornets continued their losing streak into week 10 with a road loss against the Clippers to start their week despite a 21-11-5 game for Miles Bridges. Then they would get cooked by the Lakers as they gave up 133 points, and they would give up 133 points again, this time to the Suns, and lost again despite 42 points, 8 assists from scary Terry Rozier. The Portland Trailblazers started their week with an upset win at home against the Kings behind a huge performance from the bench as Jabari Walker, Duop Reed, and Scoot Henderson all went off. Anthony Simons would miss the game against the Spurs, so Scoot, Jeremy Grant, and Malcolm Brogdon all scored at least 25 points in the losing effort. The Blazers only had 14 points in the first quarter, so you know why they lost that. They would bounce back the very next night against the Spurs again as Grant had 27, Scoot had 22, 11, and 7, and Brogdon had 27.7 assists, and Jabari Walker had 25 points, 9 rebounds off the bench to conclude the week 2 and 1. The Raptors slapped the Wizards to open their week as every starter had a good game, but everything would go downhill from there. But I also noticed that Dennis Schroeder actually came off the bench as the Raptors are starting Gary Trent Jr. now. They then looked to be the first team to beat Boston in Boston, and they were getting smoked up until the fourth quarter, where they would lock in and almost come back. Scotty Barnes had 30 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, as Siakam had 27, 5, and 5, as the Raptors lost by 2 on the road in Boston. The Raptors are lucky they got 2 quality players in exchange for OG Anunoby, who got traded before they played the Pistons, because we all know how embarrassing it was to lose that game, because they're the team that got the streak snapped on, so there's a lot of embarrassment, but they got RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly this week. I made a video on that, so go check that out after this one. Jalen Johnson made his long-anticipated return for the Hawks as they desperately missed him in his absence. However, the Hawks still could not come away with the win as they fell to the Bulls 118-113 to start their week. The Hawks then dominated the Kings from the jump on Friday night. However, they managed to choke away a 23-point lead even though their top 6 all had 12 or more points. Very disappointing game for the Hawks. Luckily, they ended their week in Washington, who was just as defensively challenged as them, so they won 130 to 126, as Trey had a 40-13 game, while DeJounte Murray had 32, and Jalen Johnson had 24, 13, and 4. That could be a very scary big 3 if Trey Young and DeJounte ever learn how to play together, but I'm not holding my breath for that. The Utah Jazz started their week off with a win in San Antonio, as Larry Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and Jordan Clarkson all cooked. Markkanen and Sexton both would cook again Thursday, this time against the Pelicans, but the Jazz ended up falling short due to very little production outside of those two players. Losing energy would be short-lived though, as they would bounce back and stun the Heat at home, as Keontae George and Kelly Olynyk had big bench games, as well as another good performance from Colin Sexton. The Brooklyn Nets looked embarrassingly bad Tuesday night against the Pistons, where they were lucky to come away with a win, but that bad performance continued and lingered on to the rest of the week, as they then decided to rest all their best players against the Bucks, so they lost by 22 points. But shout out Jalen Wilson, the rookie from Kansas. He had a 21-10 game off the bench. Then the Nets traveled to Washington and got embarrassed by the Wizards. And to conclude this awful week for the Nets, they lost in OKC 124-108. And if the Nets didn't have Mikal Bridges or Cam Johnson, they would be getting flamed by me right now for all the events that happened this week, because that was really disappointing week from a basketball standpoint and just from a professional standpoint. Maybe Andre Drummond was right about him deserving the starting spot for the Bulls, because he opened the week with a 24-point, 25-rebound game and a winning effort against the Hawks. However, that performance was not replicated Thursday, and the Bulls lost against the Pacers as Drummond had 16 rebounds, while Patrick Williams led the way in scoring with 22. They would bounce back against the 76ers, though, as the starting five of Kobe White, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, Andre Drummond, and Alex Caruso all had quality games. Bulls also got a big update on Lonzo Ball this week. He is no longer feeling pain in his knee, and that is a very optimistic sign for next year. But he's obviously going to be out for the remainder of this year. Ja Morant and the Grizzlies shocked the Pelicans again in New Orleans, exactly 1 week after they did it in Ja's return. This time, Ja had 31 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds, while Desmond Bane had 27 points, 7 assists. And yes, that game did have a lot of controversy in the end of it. Ja would then miss the game against the Nuggets, so the win streak was snapped as they lost by 37 points. Ja was back against the Clippers, but they lost their first game with him, as the final score read 117-106 in favor of the Clippers. Ja was 0-7 from 3, and they lost again, this time at home against the Kings, and this team unfortunately has come back down to reality after the 4-0 start with Ja Morant. But it's alright. They did start 6-20 without him, 6-19. So you weren't really expecting much, but a lot of people had hopes. I had hopes. Looked good, but now they're coming back down to earth. The Warriors may have lost in Denver on Christmas, but I was really impressed with everything I saw in that game. The bench was great, and they almost won despite Curry and Clay combining for only 27 points. If they were playing any other team but Denver, Boston, or even Minnesota, they probably won that game based on the performance of the role players. But unfortunately, they didn't win, and they didn't win again. This time, they lost to the Heat at home, as they only scored 102 points, not a recipe for success, and the Warriors would not bounce back, as everyone but Clay, who had 3 points, played well offensively. They just could not guard anyone or anything on the planet on Saturday against the Mavericks. But let's look at Andrew Wiggins' stats since coming off the bench, since I know y'all are questioning why he's the cover athlete for the Warriors. Off the bench this year, he's averaging 14.4 points, 4.6 rebounds, and 2 assists in 7 games. As a starter this year, he's averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. So obviously him coming off the bench has been very, very good, as he's now playing with Chris Paul, getting back in rhythm. If he keeps this up, he'll be back in the starting lineup soon. But he's still got to get back to his 2022 production. The Houston Rockets opened their week with a disappointing home loss against the Pacers despite a 30-point, 16-rebound, and 5-assist game from Alperen Sengun. The momentum of the loss Tuesday carried into Wednesday as they lost to the Suns, as Sengun and Jalen Green were the only ones that really brought any production in Dillon Brooks' absence, since we all know how vital he is. They would then lose again despite a 33-10 game from Van Vliet and a 31-point performance from Jalen Green and a 28-8-7 game from Sengun. Problem was no Jabari Smith nor Dillon Brooks, and Maxey did have 42 points, so that was probably problematic for them. But yeah, 0-3 week. Not a great week for the Rockets, especially since all the games are home. They've been very good at home this year. They went 0-3 at home this week, so that's not a good sign. After seeing AD drop 40 points against the Celtics on Christmas, I thought to myself that he should not get any more criticism about his performances. 40 points against the best team in the NBA. Can't get much better than that. Obviously, they lost to Boston, though. However, they would bounce back in their very next game as they hosted the Hornets, and it was essentially a free win. They would not have a freebie game on LeBron's birthday. Happy birthday to the King, as they traveled to Minnesota to play the Wolves. AD would have 33 points, 17 rebounds, 8 assists, masterclass of the game for AD, while LeBron had 26 points and 6 assists. No other offensive production is worth noting from anybody outside of those two, as they lost by 2 points. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy on the way that game ended, and I will not comment on it because I do not want to make a biased opinion. They would then lose in blowout fashion in New Orleans despite 34 from LeBron, and I need to start watching more Lakers games because I look at the box scores for every game to know anything important that I missed, but I've been looking at the box scores. There's been a few games like, oh yeah, they lost that, but when I look at the box score, I can't see what the issue is because there's been a lot of games they've lost that box score didn't even look bad. So if you're a Lakers fan, let me know what's happening, since I gotta watch more games this week of them because I am lost in the sauce. I have no clue what's going on in LA. The Cleveland Cavaliers might not have had Mitchell, Garland, or Mobley to start their week, but they did have Jared Allen, Isaac Okoro, and Karis LeVert as they all went off. Jared Allen had 24 points, 23 rebounds, and 6 assists, while LeVert went off for 29 points and 7 assists as Isaac Okoro added 22 in the win in Dallas. Jared Allen continued his dominant performance with a 30, 12, and 6 game as Mitchell returned to the lineup and added 34 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. Fortunately, that wasn't enough to beat the Bucks as they fell 119 to 111. Jared Allen really impressed this week. My Suns opened the week getting 50-pieced by Luka Doncic on Christmas. Merry Christmas to me. Grayson Allen was the best player on offense in that game as he tied a Christmas Day three-point make record on Christmas with 8 three-pointers made, which Luka also matched. So Grayson Allen was guarding Luka, so Grayson Allen hit 8 threes in somebody's face, and Luka hit 8 threes in our face. Nice. Luckily, rumors came out about KD being unhappy and someone even saying KD is the problem. So to respond to that, KD had 27 points, 10 rebounds, and 16 assists in the big win in Houston against the Rockets. We then got Beal back Friday, but he didn't have a great game. But Booker, KD, and Nurkic all did. But I guess that is what happens when we play a defensively challenged team like the Hornets. But Sunday almost put me to tears as a Suns fan. 31 points from Kevin Durant, 21 from Book, 25 from Beal, and a 19 and 13 game from Nurkic, and a win against the Magic, who are a good team. If we do that every game, we should not be stopped. If we can do this every game, we will win almost every game. There's no one that can match that firepower. We need this production every day. Let's manifest it. Every game we get this production, we're going to win for the most part, unless we play a really good team. The Pelicans opened their week the same as last, losing a game against the Grizzlies that they should have won. Could not score when the game was tight in the fourth quarter and overtime. And more importantly, he couldn't make a free throw. It was a bad overtime loss. Luckily for them, they bounced back to beat the Jazz Thursday as the Big Three was unstoppable, and it was the same story on Sunday against the Lakers to end their week as the Big Three dominated again, as well as the role players all having takeover. And that is why the Pelicans went 2-1 this week. Jalen Brunson must have found something good in his stocking Monday morning because he had 38 points against the Bucks to take them down on Christmas Day. Everyone did cook in that game for the Knicks, though. Brunson, Randle, and Quickly stayed hot against the Thunder, but unfortunately the Thunder could not be stopped in a losing effort. The Knicks would lose again, this time in Orlando, as Julius Randle had 38 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists. Very good game for him. The Knicks just fell in a hole too big to climb out of. The Knicks would end their week in Indiana as Randle and Brunson each had 28 points, and DiVincenzo had 38. Unfortunately, they gave up 140 points, which led to them losing. 1-3 week for the Knicks, though. They've been very defensively challenged. So if you don't know why they got OG, now you know. And another defensively challenged team is the Indiana Pacers. Tyrese Haliburton had a down week last week, but he wasn't going to have back-to-back weeks like that, as he started this week off with a 33-point, 10-assist game as the Pacers won in Houston. A big reason for that is because they shook up their starting lineup. Obi Toppin and Buddy Hield were moved to the bench in favor of Jalen Smith and Aaron Nesmith. The new starting lineup worked again in Chicago as everyone, both starters and the bench, were cooking as Halliburton dished out 20 assists and a 16-point win. Halliburton would actually have another 20-20 game and another win, as Mathurin, Turner, and Nesmith all had 20 in the 140-126 win against the Knicks. Very good week for the Pacers. Luka might have had 50 points against my Suns, but that wasn't the most demoralizing thing as a Suns fan. It was Derrick Jones Jr., as he would be the one killing our momentum with big-time dunks and shots. Derek Lively was also very good, as he had 20 and 10 in that game. I went to bed under the expectation that the Mavericks would end up beating the Cavs their next game, but Seth Curry was the only one who could shoot for the Mavs, so offense was hard to come by in the second half as the Mavericks blew a 15-point halftime lead against the Cavs. No Luka or Kyrie against the first-place T-Wolves, so the Mavs lost, obviously, but they made the game very competitive as Tim Hardaway Jr. had 32 points off the bench. Luka had his average 39, 10, and 8 game in Golden State while the bench was cooking, and the Mavericks would beat the Warriors 130-122 to end their week 2-2. The Magic almost choked a lead to the Wizards Tuesday. Luckily, Franz was cooking and Paolo did his thing, but Anthony Black was the standout as he had a career-high night. They then welcomed the 76ers to town. However, they couldn't capitalize on the absence of Embiid, as they only scored 92 points in a 20-point loss. They then hosted the Knicks and almost blew another big lead, but luckily they prevailed as Franz had 32 points and 9 rebounds as Paolo did his thing again. Jalen Suggs had 21 as well in the win. Paolo had 28, 9, and 7. Franz had 28, 7, and 6. Good bench scoring as Wendell Carter missed one shot and Cole Anthony had 13. But all of that wasn't enough to stop my Phoenix Suns. Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero. If y'all are still not saying they're a good duo in the NBA, this week was all you needed to see in order to know that they are legitimate. If I told you De'Aaron Fox had 43 points on 16 of 26 shooting, 7 for 15 from 3. On the same night, Sabonis had 34 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists. You would think that would be enough to beat the 2024 Portland Trailblazers, right? Well, it wasn't, because Sacramento's bench and everyone outside of Fox and Sabonis brought no production at all. They almost lost again in Atlanta, but they came back from down 23 as Fox had 31 points, 6 rebounds, and 8 assists. Sabonis had 25 points, 10 rebounds, and 7 assists, and Monk and Wiles both went off the bench. And then they traveled to Memphis as the big three of Sabonis, Fox, and Monk all cooked, and the game was not a game, to say the least, as they won by 31. I don't know how they lost to the Trailblazers, but 2-1 week, can't complain about that if you're a Kings fan, or if they're one of your teams that you're rooting for like me. The Clippers only had 2 games this week, both without Kawhi Leonard, but they were able to snap their 2-game losing streak to open the week as Harden went for 29 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds. And then Harden had 16 points, 13 assists in the next game, and another win against the Grizzlies as 7 players were in double figures. In case you missed Jaime Hawkins' Christmas Day performance, he had 31 points on 11 for 15 shooting in the win. He is perfect for Miami and will continue to get better, which is very scary. I also watched the game, and it was the first time I saw Tyler Hero play this year, and I wasn't really impressed. He still struggles defensively. I mean, the 76ers bullied him, and he had some bad turnovers that were just not smart at all. He has been balling this year, but I wasn't impressed with that game at all. Someone I was impressed with was Bam, as he did his average thing, 26 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, something light. The Heat would grind out a very offensively challenged game on both sides against the Warriors as they won 114-102 behind 26 from Hero, and they would get shocked in Utah despite a 28-16 game from Bam, 25-6 and 6 from Hero. But when those two are the only two bringing production offensively for you, you ain't gonna win much. Philly was without Embiid on Christmas, and there was a lid on the basket for Maxey, so you would have expected the 76ers to get blown out by the Heat, and it looked that way for a while, but everybody else on Philly stepped up and were really impressive. The 76ers would bounce back with their first win without Embiid all year on the road against the Magic, behind 22 plus points from Maxey, Harris, and Melton. If I were to didn't tell you that Marcus Morris hit a dagger and one three-pointer in 2023, you'd probably think I was lying, but he did against the Rockets as they beat them without Embiid for their second consecutive win. Maxey had 27 at half in that game and finished with 42. However, all that momentum didn't travel to Chicago as they lost 105-92 as they had no offensive rhythm. I know there's going to be a lot of questions asking why I dropped Philly. Trust me, it hurts, but Embiid has missed multiple weeks now. He's missed a lot of games. They struggle to win without Embiid, and we can't overlook the injury concern because that's why they're losing games, and Embiid is historically a very injury-prone player. I was shocked by how little the Nuggets bench performed at home against the Warriors on Christmas because they were not good at all. Luckily for them, Jamal Murray, Jokic, and the other three starters went off in the win. They then smoked the Grizzlies 142-105 as Jokic didn't miss a single shot all game. But we did get news that Aaron Gordon is going to miss time, and with that, the Nuggets gave up 40 to SGA and got slapped at home against the Thunder to end their week 2-1. Aaron Gordon, get better soon. The injury, he got attacked by a dog, I think. But yeah, some dogs can be crazy like that. So get better, rest up, get ready for playoffs, since the Nuggets will need you to guard the best player every game. Christmas Day was not merry for Milwaukee as they could not throw it in the ocean from three. However, 32 from Dame and Giannis each and 24 from Middleton made the game in Madison Square Garden close, yet they still fell short in a 129-122 loss. The momentum of that loss carried into their next game on the road against the Nets, but luckily they locked in the second half as Middleton and Giannis both went off in the 22-point win. Giannis and Dame would then each have 30 in a win in Cleveland, but everyone really contributed in the win, which is always nice to see. 2-1 week for the Bucks. I was excited for the Timberwolves Thunder game going into Tuesday, but the T-Wolves disappointed as their top-notch defense could not stop any member of the Thunder's young Big Three as they lost by 23 points. Anthony Edwards would not let them lose two in a row though, so he dropped 44 on a shorthanded Mavericks to win 118-110. And then against the Lakers to end their week, Anthony Edwards and Naz Reid both looked like all-stars in the T-Wolves 2-point home win against the Lakers. Not the best game offensively for the Wolves, but when you shut down everyone but LeBron and AD on the Lakers, you have a good chance to win, and that is what they did. When SGA has a 34-point, 9-assist, and 6-rebound game, as Lou Dort and Chet Holmgren each have 20 and J-Dub has 21, doesn't take much but looking at the box score to know why they smoked the Timberwolves. J-Dub and SGA both dropped 36 against the Knicks, as Chet had 22. Outside of that, I saw in the box score after the game that they really didn't rebound well at all, and that's probably going to be the downfall of this team because they have no size unless they trade for somebody like Larry Markkinen. Let's manifest it together. SGA had a 40 ball and Chet with 24, and a great team defense led to a huge win in Denver as they shut down the Nuggets 119-93. And to end their week, the Thunder beat the Nets in a balanced team effort to end the week 4-0. It was not an easy 4-0 at all, and after seeing this week, we all need to come to the sense that the Thunder are the best team in the Western Conference for the regular season. Now, I know the Timberwolves have been very, very good this year. They beat them by 23. The Nuggets, the defending champs, beat them by 26 in Denver. Yes, Aaron Gordon wasn't there, but 26 points is 26 points. This team has beaten everyone else in the West, and they're clicking right now. J-Dub has been amazing of late. I mean, he had 36 points, he had 21, but he's been very good. J-Dub, SGA, and Chet Holmgren are an elite Big Three. If this team had any size, I would say they're a good playoff team, but I have to see them in the playoffs before I can give them that credit that they are going to be a contender. I wouldn't say they're a contender, but what they've been doing in the regular season, especially of late, everything's clicking now. They are definitely the best in the West, unless they go to Minnesota and get cooked by the Timberwolves. But that's the only way that I don't think they're the best team in the West during this regular season. And now watch them have a bad week now that I'm saying this. But I was very impressed with everything I saw this week from the Thunder. Drew Holiday had a great Christmas as the Celtics had a great day as a whole in a win in LA. The Celtics then avoided major embarrassment Thursday against the Pistons as they allowed the Pistons to take them to overtime on their home court. Tatum and Porzingis would both miss the second night of a back-to-back as the Celtics would host the Raptors, but there was no problem for the Celtics until the fourth quarter where they almost choked the game away. Jaylen Brown would go off for 31, 10, and 6 on 11 of 16 shooting. Derek White was phenomenal again as he has been all year, and they then proceeded to cook the Spurs to close out the week and 2023 with a 4-0 week. Congrats Celtics, you're number one. Best team on paper, not going to argue with it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this weekly recap. We do these every Monday. Have a good one. Bye. If you want to watch my thoughts on the Knicks Raptors trade, OG Anunoby trade, click on this video here. If you want to know where I think DeJounte Murray's going to end up, click on this video right here. 76ers, let's manifest something.